Today, our topic is producing the product, writing process. Before writing process and explaining about writing process, I'd like to tell you why did I name it like producing the product. I read it in a book. This chapter was titled as producing the product. Then I thought about it, and then finally I inferred that writing process how it can be like a product, mean in business word or in an very technical or practical word. Whenever you're writing, your writing may be considered like product, how it is and may be worthy like a product. For example, if you're making a mobile phone, and for this mobile phone you are handing over a manual a mobile phone manual or its user manual as well. If user manual is not as effective as the mobile phone, then it is useless. So that's why your writing is similar to that product and more worthier even than that product, because this is basically facilitating the product. So whenever we are writing, firstly we had a blank page like this one. Now this blank page may be too much worthy and may be useless or a trash. It's up to you. Whatever you are putting on this page, your writing can make it worthy and your writing can make it useless. So that's why we are learning about this writing process, because this writing process can make our this page a worthy one rather than a trash one. So how we can make it a worthy one page? Let's move on and let's learn. We have to follow a writing process. Whenever you are writing, it's not like that you have written something haphazardly. You have not collected any data, you have not worked properly. So if you are working without you are making any product without any proper process, then that would be a substandard product. So similar analogy can be presented here. If your writing is not going through the proper process, then this is also not the standard one. This can also be the substandard. So for this purpose, we have to go through the 3 steps of the writing process. Number 1 is pre-writing, and number 2 is writing, number 3 is rewriting. First, we'd like to discuss the pre-writing. For example, initially we have this blank page. Now first of all, we have to think what we need to write on this page that it can be made worthy. So for this purpose, you should know what's the purpose of your communication and all those things that we have discussed earlier on in 7 C's. Now we are going to discuss the first step, pre-writing. First of all, we need to examine our purpose. Why we are writing, why we are filling up that blank page. So our writing may be on 2 different purposes, based on 2 different purposes. One is internal motivation and other is external motivation. For example, if you are working in any organization and you are feeling that something is not going in the right direction and you yourself feel that it is worthy to be reported, then you are writing on the basis of your internal motivation something, then its purpose is different. And on the other end, for example, your senior, your director asks you to write a report or asks you to write something, then definitely he would give you the directions that he need this particular information. So if you're writing on the same topic but your motivation is different, then the content may vary, because in internal motivation you will write down on the aspects and on the content that you are thinking worthy to be discussed, and on the basis of external motivation, when you are directed by someone, then you have to think that what is his requirement, you have to fulfill his requirement. So before filling that page, you know your internal and external motivation. Accordingly, you are going to craft the content. So your content on the same topic may vary according to your motivation. This is the first thing, your purpose. The second one, what do you want to achieve by your writing? What is the main purpose? For example, you may write to persuade someone, just like in the call centers people are persuading. Then you may write to instruct. For example, you are a manager and you're passing over the directives. So earlier on we have discussed this would be a kind of dominating language tone accordingly. So we can set the tone if we know the right goal. Then probably we are sharing some information and we are writing to inform, and probably we are writing to build up trust. We are writing goodwill gesture letters and all these kind of things. So the second thing, we should know our goal, and by determining our goal, whether we are informing, instructing, persuading, or building the trust, we have to tone our language and we have to write down accordingly. So this is the second thing. Now in our mind we have decided, okay, it is on the internal motivation or it is on the external motivation based. Then our purpose is to instruct or is to persuade. Now we have finalized two things. Accordingly, we will move on to gather the data. For example, earlier on, as I've told you, there are different ways of data gathering. It may be our convenience that how we are going to collect the data, whether we are going to collect the data according to the need and format of our upcoming writing, or whether we are writing according to the need. However we are easy, accordingly we will collect the data. For example, in this kind of answering the reporter question data, we can think that if we are writing something on the basis of external motivation, then this is a good approach to collect the data. Whatever we want to put on the page, firstly we would like to collect what we have to put on that one. We have to collect the concrete information. So we can gather the data by answering the reporter's questions, and this may be more applicable on where we have external motivation. Then mind mapping. For example, if you are writing an essay and you are writing about terrorism, so there are different aspects of terrorism. If you're talking about terrorism, then particularly you are talking about state terrorism, you're talking about terrorist another entity, state terrorism another entity, religious terrorism another entity. Then if whether you are talking about the purposes behind, then history, then terrorism in your country, whatever you want to talk about, there are the multiple prospects. You mind map, you think, okay, I am going to discuss these aspects in my writing. So accordingly, when you finalize this thing, then you may write accordingly. Then another thing that is called brainstorming. Generally you have practiced or not, I don't know, but at initial stage in school level or college level, it has been asked to the students and their peers. They sit down and this is the topic. They choose the random ideas, then they enlist their ideas and they share the idea, they write down the things. So brainstorming means you just brainstorm and you think, okay, this is the topic and I have to write about these things. You list out the things as you have listed out here. Here in the mind mapping, you are finding out in relation with one another. Here you are generally brainstorming that what you can write about that topic. So this is another way you brainstorm. Sometime this is the topic, okay, but I need to write on it. Then outlining. This is a traditional way. For example, if you are writing your thesis, if you are writing any report, any kind of thing, first you will try to find out. This is also the traditional way. For example, if you are writing an essay, first you will write the introduction or whatever the topic is, then its pros, its advantages or disadvantages, its cons, its causes, so then preventive measures, then conclusion. So this is generally when you are writing, you may think about it. For example, this is another traditional approach, is quite common. For example, if you are writing your dissertation or thesis, you get the guideline from your university that you have to write down on these aspects. Then you first start with the introduction, then with the literature review, research methodology, and accordingly you go on. If you have these parameters, these outlines in your mind, then you can write on it quite easily, and then you can link your writing properly. So this is another way. Then after outlining, there is storyboarding. This is about visual planning. As I've told you earlier on, it's up to you, your purpose, whatever you're writing, you can accordingly choose which way of collecting the data is good. Storyboarding is the visual planning that you graphically organize, okay, after this picture, this picture, this picture, you are going to make this thing. So accordingly, sometimes people are visual learners, so they, rather than making an outlining, they go for the visual planning. So this is called storyboarding. By this you can collect the data as well. Another thing, two more things which are quite similar somehow but different as well. One is organizational chart. Sometimes people make organizational chart, link the information with this one, with this one, with this one, and organizational chart. When you're writing about any organization, then you can make the organizational charts. Then there is flow charting. The people who are from the engineering background, they know very well what is the flow charting. The organizational chart, in organizational chart you have to link the departments together. If you're moving one another, you are changing their place, but they are under the similar head, that doesn't matter. But in flow charting, that is proper process. If in process, if you are making any change in that particular process, as I have taught you about the 7 C's cycle of communication. In the cycle of communication, if you are thinking the message is coming before the context, then that cycle is not working. So that is a kind of flow charting where we are making the diagram of the cycle of communication. So we are flow charting, and then accordingly we are collecting the information and we are putting in it. So this is how we can collect the data. These are the different ways that I have discussed. Now first you made up your mind, then you collect the data from the any of the ways that are convenient for you from these one which I have discussed. And then now you have the data as well. Now the next stage on the paper, how to put that data. You have the data in the raw material, but how to format it, then accordingly you will choose the format. Which format? If you are writing email, then you will put the data according to email. In the previous lectures we have discussed about the letters writing. If you have to write a letter, accordingly you may put that data in the letter, in the block format, in the modified block, or in and similar in any of these things. If you want to put something in MS PowerPoint, as you have given your presentation already, so you can put the data accordingly. So now you have the data, and finally you will determine how to put the data. So this was about pre-writing. You have thought what to write, then you collected the data, then you finally draft the things. Now this is the first draft on this page. After doing on this blank page, after doing all this activity, you have put the data in somehow, in some shape. Finally, then you move on towards writing. So the things are going too much. I'll discuss in the next video about the writing and rewriting. Thank you very much.